Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, and thank you for uh, attending this wonderful symposium that Culture has prepared from the Belize Heritage Group. My name is Arit Norales. I am a third year student at the UA Cave Hill within the Faculty of Social Sciences, and my presentation will be under the topic of Belize in a historical context. I want to apologize for you not seeing my face during this presentation, but I wanted to reserve as much bandwidth as possible as we move through the presentation. So it would be remiss of me first to not go through my sentimentalities for this presentation. It's such an honor for me to be here along with bona fide academics who have essentially paved the way for me as a budding one of which is Dr. Dinan Vernon, who has just released a book on political clientelism that I am sure will be the subject of many class discussions this semester. And I also, of course, see this as a duty as a recipient of this Arthur Lewis Scholarship for Indigenous People, and as a citizen of the Caribbean charged with the generational task of fortifying our cultural confidence. I have to very quickly, just acknowledge Dr. Henry Charles, Dr. Tennyson Joseph, and Evan Mose Hyde, comrades who have taken time out to help bring focus, substance, and by their own lived experience, inspiration for this paper. So now that that's over, we could jump into the presentation called Sitting at the Dock, Sugar and Cream, the Case of the Stevedores of the Christian Workers Union. So Belize is a country that sits at the nexus of Latin America and the Caribbean, one with a history of colonialism, both British and residual Spanish, given the nations that surround us. It's an ebb and flow that has dictated in many ways the state of nation, state Belize. Today, however, I'll be zooming in on the politics of Southside Belize City that has raised me and that I was raised within, the politics of trade unionism of the Stevedores. So writing this commentary paper for me was an attempt at epistipraxis, which is combining what Egan and Scherer call the process which society seeks to achieve an understanding in relation to its environment, and epistemology and practice of Fiere, which marries reflection and action, that teaches us to critically reflect upon our reality and transform it through further action and critical reflection. I think Professor Charlene Swartz beautifully marks this as an exercise that challenges the boundaries between knowledge, practice, and politics. So what are some of the contemporary challenges faced by unionism in the Caribbean, trade unionism in the Caribbean? Here are some of the challenges that I think can go across board. The internal grievance committees that are established by companies to kind of win the bargaining power of unions. There's also the pacifying employment benefits, what would I call like that? They shush benefits or they shush money to get us to not engage with the bargaining for our labor rights. There's, of course, within the Caribbean context, and I think even outside in some ways, infiltration of party political interest, and then the general mindset related to the antiquity of trade unions. So I wanted here to apply, center to this paper, the application of political thought. That was the point of writing this paper. And I wanted to apply it using Marx's law of dialectic materialism, which is the law of unity and struggle of opposites that I think is perfectly exposed and explained by Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, who is currently the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. He would have done extensive writing on this in his academic years. So he writes that a trade union is a component of capitalism to the extent that it grew out of it, but at the same time, trade unionism is in opposition to capitalism to the extent that it represents the labor which is objectively opposed to capital. He goes further to say that a trade union is in a structurally ambivalent position and must struggle either to straddle the pull of conflicting forces or to break out of them. So in essence, what that is saying is that unionism came out of capitalism because it opposed it, but also it might not have existed if weren't for capitalism. So there's this push and pull factor that unionism would have come out of. Moving on to the CW past and present. So the CW was born out of a crop of trade unions with the Catholic Church ideology expressed in Rerum Novarum, the encyclical of Pope Leo XIII on capital and labor, which emerged as a response to liberal and Marxist theories in the Industrial Revolution that expressed the need for workers' rights, but denied the existence of a class struggle, right? The first major industrial conflict that the CW would have faced was with Pauling and Company Limited, which was contracted at the time to build the new site of the capital, which is Belmopan. It was a really restrictive collective bargaining agreement that gave immense rights to the company that were in direct contravention with labor rights. It was a conflict that later actually led to the suspension of Nicholas Pollard Sr. From a union he would have started in 1962. This case is, of course, not the focus of the paper, but I think it was an important segue to bridge the realities that the struggle between labor and capital vis-a-vis transnational, multinational, and offshore companies continue today. And I think lays out a historical geography that helps us to contextualize modern issues. So the original sin, as the current president of the CW calls it, is the privatization of the port in 2002, later the receivership that came in 2012 by Private Investment Limited, a company of Waterloo Investment Holdings Limited, owned by Michael Ashcroft, that are the debt holders and creditors within the receivership. Now, all this was revealed in a letter which, according to local news, Breaking Belize News, he condemned the quote-unquote illegal strike action by Stevedores, which has shut down the port, and called it incredible that the Ministry of Labor had not intervened to keep these essential workers on the job. Now, for me, the mere fact that Mr. Ashcroft would have written this cautionary note to the then leader of the country, Right Honorable Dean Barrow, indicates the level, access, and proximity to power that he holds. And further to that, even though he simultaneously claims to not hold an interest in owning the port, he also wishes to invest a $200 million lot into a port facility at PBL that is the subject of many environmental talks right now. And the continued insolvency of the port allows for the almost perpetual encroachment on the rights of workers in the name of further investment in capital. Nurse in 2001 calls this those free market ideologies that found the origin in Caribbean government response to crises of international capitalism. We note that around the 2000 to 2005 time within Belize was a very turbulent economic time. And so not we, but I believe that this was part and parcel of those government responses. And it was also like private business that kind of went left. So there are several things that were happening that I think would have influenced where we are now with the Port of Belize and the Stevedores. Now, as we move just forward in the presentation, two of the things that I think the paper would have focused on was state and economic violence against the trade union. So the COVID pandemic acted as a sort of, what we call in a Creole, that cover Benjamin for the PBL, because it was during the grueling heights of the pandemic that the company decided to carry out its economic onslaught on the sister unit of the only completely unionized workforce in Belize, citing a 40% fall in revenue. This was said without consultation and corroboration by the bargaining agent, as exposed in Article 25 of their CBA. It should be noted that on July 22nd, the PBL, in my view, committed a direct act of union busting when terminating 36 staff of the port, 29 of whom were union members, and 4 of that 29 being executive members that negotiated on half of its wider membership. Later, the PBL would seek to sue members of the CW for alleged damage to property. Now, there was also state assaults against the union, one I think which was quite an embarrassing day for Belize. The state assault came on that same day, which coincidentally also marked the 101st anniversary of the 1919 riots by World War I veterans in what Ashton calls a bread and discrimination riot. So stevedores, in support of their fellow members and in response to those terminations, marched peacefully onto PBL compound and sat with hands up, where they were violently met with a barrage of tear gas and rubber bullets that left media supporters and even one stevedore unconscious. This was after approval of peaceful protest was given by the Commissioner of Police, Chester Williams, and to this day, it is unclear who made that call. The then minister in charge of national security and former Attorney General Michael Perry noted that under the sky and in no world would I send the police department to rough up and arrest stevedores on behalf of the vampire Michael Ashcroft and his Belizean minions. One of the things that I pulled from what I think is one of the most seminal social researches that would have happened in Belize in 2010, the male social participation and violence in urban Belize. Gail Mortis and Hampton wrote this. This colonial police force, designed for the protection of the propertied class and maintenance of social order, rather than the prevention or detection of crime, remains intact in the Caribbean today and with disastrous results. One of those disastrous results, of course, we saw manifest itself on July 22nd, 2020, with this onslaught against peaceful protesters who have a right to protest. So Joseph notes in his book, Defending Caribbean Freedom, he says that a period of active trade union struggle may finally signal Caribbean impatience with neoliberalism. It is my feeling that the activism of the stevedores at the Port of Belize, a port in insolvency that is managed by a receivership that wishes to dispose them into antiquity, is a defining moment not only for Belize, but for Caribbean labor. And I think we are to savor it as a point of vitality and virility of the labor movement, which is all of our concern. I wanted to end with a very jarring and emotional interview by Evan Mosehide, who is the president of the CWU, who responded to a question from the media about, how is the media supposed to feel? Not the media, how are businesses supposed to feel when you essentially shut down the port? And his response was one that I think encompasses all the things that we have spoken about: capitalism, exploitation of labor, the type of jobs that we have been given to do because of our history. It encompasses so many things of both historical, contemporary, and futures, really. So I really wanted to end on that. So I'll play that now.
We are not saying that these are ideal situations. What we are saying that it is not ideal, but it's not out of any injury or malice or intent on our part. We are standing in a situation where we have to stand. We are compelled to stand. To not stand is to just completely surrender what we consider to be justice for them. We are here to face anybody right now and answer them as best we can, so that you're out there to listen. Know that we know how we come up. We can shut down no port. We know run down conflict. Our members run down money. Our members run down the hustle. They run down work. Our members run down container ship. Man, they out there, the dogs, see if somebody not show up so they could give them a chance. That when they're not into shut down. They're not into have to face B, they have to look to move containers. They're not into man, they tell them right now, boy, all on a ship going a big creek. Just imagine that. You best believe that all our members have been told that. So the stance one they take right now, just imagine what it takes for them to take that. Imagine that they have to go to their wife or go to their lady and tell them right now, I know that you just want to work and bring home the money, but understand that a bigger picture to go on. So when we come here today, we come here to talk to UNO. We come here to appeal to UNO. We come here to deal with people who are be fair-minded. This is not a matter of no set of bad man or evil man, a set of hard-working people And the reality what they face is that just for secure, righteous and just remuneration, because they have lost so much. 2021 I mean a devastating year. For 2 years, they worry about loose sugar. Now hear the rumors for 2 years. We clash in a 2020. 2020 we clash. Stevedores shut down. Pan just the rumors. Fight for get one agreement for say if this happen, we want talk money. And when it happen and we get wrong for talk money, man say, no, we attack gangs.
And with that, I end. Like I said, I think it perfectly encompasses the fight that we should all take part in, whether or not we're intimately connected to unions or not. Because, labor has been the driving force of the Belizean society for so long. Politicians recognize that. I think workers recognize that. I think it is time that we all acknowledge the importance of labor and continue to advocate for and lobby for better labor laws that are contextually relevant and that are people-centered and that do not, as I have said, dispose people into antiquity. So thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to your questions as we move through today's symposium. So thank you very much.